A Christmas Carol, Chapter 1. Molly was dead. There was no doubt that he was dead. He died many years ago, in fact, but his business partner Scrooge continued to do business in a company named Scrooge and Molly. Some people called Scrooge by his true name, and some people called him Molly, but he did not care which name they used. In fact, Scrooge did not care what other people thought about him at all. People thought he was a very unkind old man, a man who never spent a penny more than he had to, but Scrooge did not care at all. He just continued to act as always, in winter and in summer, in warm weather and in cold weather. Scrooge was such a very cold man that nothing could ever warm him and nothing could ever change him. One Christmas Eve, Scrooge was sitting in his office in a dark part of the city of London. He always kept his door open so that he could watch his clock Bob Cratchit. Scrooge watched Bob to see if he was working. He also watched him to see that he did not use too much coal on his very little fire, a fire that was so little that it gave very little heat at the best of times. As he was working, and as he was watching Bob Cratchit, Scrooge was surprised by a visit from his nephew Fred. "Merry Christmas, Uncle," the young man said in a loud, very happy voice. "Nonsense," answered Scrooge. "Why are you so happy?" "I'm happy because tomorrow is Christmas, Uncle. Christmas is a time when everyone can be happy. It is a time when every man can feel friendship for all other men." Scrooge only repeated, "Nonsense. I've come to invite you to visit my home for dinner tomorrow. My wife and I want to have Christmas dinner with us." "Visit you? Never. Why did you get married?" "I got married because I fell in love, and my wife and I are very happy, Uncle." Scrooge's nephew asked him many times, but the old man refused to agree, so the young man had to leave. On his way out, however, Fred stopped to wish Bob a happy holiday. Bob was cold beside his little fire, but still he was warmer, kinder than old Mr. Scrooge. Bob was happy to answer the nephew's friendly greetings with the friendly greetings of his own. Scrooge was soon again stopped in his work by two rather fat men who arrived. They were there to ask Scrooge to give some money to help poor people who were cold and hungry at the winter season. Scrooge refused to give even 1 penny to such poor people, however, and in the end the two men had to leave without any of Scrooge's money. Scrooge was no kinder when a poor little boy came outside singing a Christmas carol. This made Scrooge very angry. He picked the little boy up and made him go away. "Nonsense," he thought. At the end of the day, Scrooge let Bob go home. Before he went, Bob asked for a holiday on the next day, Christmas. He wanted to spend the day with his family. "You want a holiday," Scrooge said. "You mean that you want a day's salary without doing any work." "It only happens once a year, sir," Bob said shyly. "Think about me. I have to pay you money for working, but you don't do any work at all." In the end, however, Scrooge gave Bob a holiday the next day. But first, Bob had to promise to come to work even earlier than usual on the day after Christmas. Scrooge ate dinner by himself and read all of the newspapers and then went home. It was a dark night, so dark that even when Scrooge got near his own house, he had to use his hands to find a way. Scrooge lived in 3 old dark rooms which his partner Mr. Molly used to live in. The rooms were dark, and the building was dark. No one else lived in the building. The rest of it was used only for offices. Just as Scrooge started to open the door of his lonely building, he saw in the door the face of his dead partner, Jacob Marley. There was no mistake. Scrooge thought, I've seen the door many, many times. Also, I've seen Marley's face many, many times. But this is different. Marley's hair seemed to be moving in a wind. His eyes were open, looking straight at Scrooge, and not moving at all. Scrooge was surprised and afraid, but somehow he opened the door and went in. Inside, he looked carefully at the other side of the door to see if he could see the back of Marley's head. But no, there was no trace of Marley there, and so Scrooge walked up the many wide steps to his rooms. After he unlocked his heavy door, Scrooge carefully locked it twice, and then he looked carefully in all three of his rooms, a sitting room, a bedroom, and a storeroom. However, he could not find anything wrong. There was no trace of Marley. Scrooge was glad of that. Soon after Scrooge sat down in front of his fire, however, he saw the rope of a bell in the corner swing. Mr. Scrooge never used that bell. No one ever used that bell. And there was no wind in the room. It was now swinging, however, and then Scrooge heard the bell ring far below him in the building. And then Scrooge heard someone or something walking up the stairs. There was also the sound of heavy chains being pulled up the stairs. The person, or the thing, came closer and closer. It did not even stop at the door. No, it came right through the locked door. It was the ghost of Marley. It was Marley, all right. Scrooge was sure of that. Instead of a belt, though, Marley wore, or rather, he pulled along with him, a heavy chain on which there were money boxes and record books and keys. And Scrooge could see right through him. He could clearly see the two buttons on the back of Marley's coat. "What do you want?" Scrooge asked in as loud a voice as he could. "I want much," answered Marley. "Who are you?" "You know me, don't you? I'm Marley, or I was Marley, until I died 7 years ago." Scrooge did not want to believe in this ghost. He thought that, perhaps, the food he ate for dinner was making him ill. The ghost kept on talking just like Marley, however, and in the end, Scrooge just had to believe in it. "You are probably asking yourself why I am here," the ghost said. "Every man should go out and join in the lives of many others and try to make the others happy. If he does not do it while he is alive, he must do it after he dies. When I was alive, I was just like you are now. I thought only of money. And so now I must walk through the world. Why are you wearing or carrying that long chain?" Scrooge asked. "I made this chain myself while I was alive. I made it by being interested only in money. I was interested only in making money and saving money and counting money. When I died, your chain was just as long as mine, and I died 7 years ago, so your chain is even longer and heavier by now. Oh, Marley, tell me something to make me happy." "I cannot do that, Scrooge. Men do not think how much good they could do, and how little good they really do so. After they die, it is too late." "But you are a good businessman," Scrooge said. "A good businessman? Yes, I was a good businessman, but I should have been more interested in helping others and in making others happy. This time of the year, Christmas, is the worst for me now, because this is the time of year when people should be most kind and most helpful. Scrooge was not at all happy about any of this talk. He wished Molly's ghost would go away. I'm here to tell you, Scrooge, that you still have a chance. I'm dead, so it is too late for me, but you are still alive, and so you still have a chance to do good. Thank you for that good news, Molly. The ghost continued without answering. You have 3 visitors, 3 ghosts. One will come tomorrow night just at 1. The second will come the night after that at the same time, and the third will come the third night just at 12. Be ready for them, Scrooge, and remember what I have told you. Then the ghost moved toward the closed window. The window was open by the time the ghost reached it, and then the ghost flew out the window, leaving Scrooge alone at last. Scrooge looked out the window. He saw many ghosts flying about in the darkness. All of them looked unhappy. Scrooge knew some of them. He noticed an old friend who carried a chain which seemed heavier than anyone else's. This ghost seemed to want to help a poor old woman who sat with a child in her arms at a door on the street below. And then the ghost disappeared, or the night became darker. For one reason or another, Scrooge could see nothing more, so he closed the window and looked again at the door. It was still locked and locked again. It was now 2 o'clock in the morning. Scrooge was too tired to try to explain all of these strange things. He went right to bed and right to sleep. Chapter 2. When Scrooge woke up, it was dark, very dark. Therefore, he was very surprised when he heard the bell ringing 12 times. 12 times! Could it be 12 o'clock? Scrooge jumped out of bed and looked out of his window. It was dark all right, and there was no one on the street. Scrooge went to bed again and thought and thought. He thought about Molly and about Molly's ghost. Was it all a dream, or was it real? Scrooge could not decide. He was still thinking about it when he heard the bell ring again. 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, Scrooge said to himself, Molly's ghost said that I was going to have a visitor. Just as Scrooge remembered this, he saw beside his bed a small child. Well, not quite a child. He was as small as a child, and his face was the face of a child. But his hair was long and white. Even in winter, there were summer flowers on his clothes. Under his arm, it carried a tall cap. The strangest thing about the child, however, was the bright light which came from his head. Who are you? Scrooge asked. I'm the ghost of Christmas past, answered the child, and I have come to help you. Get up and come with me. When the child started to walk toward the window, Scrooge was afraid. I'm a human, he said, and I cannot fly. I'll fall. Don't worry, said the child. He touched Scrooge on the heart, and away they went. Scrooge went out of the window and found himself in daylight in the country far from the city. I know this place, he shouted. Of course you do, answered the child. This is where you lived when you were a child. Scrooge remembered everything which they saw as they walked toward a little town, and he knew every face which they met. No one could see Scrooge, but Scrooge could see all of them. The people whom he saw were all happy, and all of them were wishing each other a Merry Christmas. Almost all of the schoolboys are gone, but one schoolboy is left all alone, said the child. Do you remember? Yes, I remember that very well, answered Scrooge sadly. They went into a large, lonely school which was very dark and very dirty. In the back, in the darkest room, they found a little boy reading. Scrooge felt very sorry to see the boy, because it was Scrooge himself when he was a child. It was also a very strange feeling for Scrooge, as an old man, to be looking at himself when he was still a boy. The boy found joy in reading, making friends with people like Robinson Crusoe, but it was not the same as having real boys for friends, and the boy was sad and lonely. The old man Scrooge felt sorry for the boy. He wished now that the boy singing Christmas carols would come again. He would surely give him some money now. Now let us see another Christmas, said the child. As Scrooge looked, the room became even darker and more dirty. The boy was older now. He was not reading, but walking, looking very sad and lonely. Suddenly, the door opened, and a sweet little girl came in. "Fanny!" shouted the boy Scrooge. It was his sister Fanny. She lived with their father. In the past, their father was not kind to Scrooge, and so Scrooge had to go to school and could not live at home. Now, however, Fanny said that Scrooge could come home. Home forever and ever. Won't that be fun? Scrooge and his sister said goodbye to the teacher of the school. Scrooge was not at all sorry to leave the school and the teacher. He thought only of how happy he was to go home and to be with his sister Fanny. As the old man Scrooge and the ghost of Christmas past watched the two children go home, the child said that Fanny was never healthy, but she was always kind and helpful. "You are certainly right," answered Scrooge. "She grew up to be a woman, and I believe she had children before she died," said the ghost. "One child, my nephew," said Scrooge. He thought that he was never very kind and helpful to his nephew Fred. Scrooge was not at all like his sister Fanny. The old man Scrooge and the ghost then went to the city. Scrooge saw a store he remembered well. He worked there when he was a boy, and now everyone in the store, the owner, Mr. Fezziwig, and his wife, and all the boys who worked there, was getting ready for Christmas. They prepared many good things to eat, and many friends came to join them. The young people, the boy Scrooge among them, danced, and when they finished, Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig and their friends danced and danced. Oh, how happy everyone was at Christmas! And when Scrooge and the other boys went to their little beds under the stairs, they dreamed happy dreams. "What a little money Mr. Fezziwig spent," said the ghost, "and yet how happy it made everyone." Scrooge had to agree. He thought of how he treated his clerk, Bob Cratchit, and how he didn't give him any more money than he had to. Scrooge thought that he would be kinder in the future. Next, Scrooge saw himself as a young man sitting beside a lovely young lady. "You have changed so," the young lady was saying. "The man I used to love seems to have gone. Now you are interested only in making money." "I have to make money, Belle. I don't want to be poor." "Now you love money more than you love me." "I still love you," said the young man Scrooge. Belle shook her head. "No, you don't really love me anymore. And I don't want to marry a man who loves only money." The young man Scrooge tried to make the young lady change her mind, but she would not. "Goodbye," she said. "I hope you will be happy making money." Scrooge was so sad when he saw this, and when he remembered this past conversation, that he did not want to see anything more. The ghost took him by the arm, however, and made him watch one more thing. Now Scrooge saw a mother and a daughter sitting in a room. The room was not large, and it was not beautiful, but it was filled with comfort and with love. Around the two women there played many children. The children were very noisy, but very happy. The door opened, and the father of the children came in. He had his arms filled with Christmas presents. Everyone, his wife and all his children, were very happy to see him. Now that he was home, their happiness was complete. Later in the evening, after the younger children went to bed, the father, his wife, and his older daughter sat together around a table. "Belle," said the husband, "I saw an old friend of yours in the city today." "Oh? Who was it? Was it Scrooge?" she asked with a laugh. "That's right, old Scrooge. I looked in his window, and there he was in his office all alone, counting money." "Take me home," shouted the old man Scrooge to the ghost of Christmas past. "I don't want to see any more." Scrooge took the child's cap and pushed it down over his head. The light continued to shine, however, falling onto the floor. Scrooge now felt very tired. It was very difficult for him to get back to bed, but he did it. And then he fell asleep. Chapter 3. When Scrooge woke up, the clock again, or still, said it was 1 o'clock. Scrooge lay in bed a few minutes, wondering where he would see his next visitor. But no visitor came. There was, however, a light which filled the room. Where was the light coming from? At last, Scrooge got out of bed and went to the door of his sitting room. When he opened the door, he was very surprised. It was certainly his own sitting room, but it was all changed. Many pretty things were hanging from the walls, and there was a big fire in the fireplace, and the tables were covered with lots and lots of good things to eat. Scrooge's room was always dark and cold and uncomfortable. Now it was all changed, and changed in such a pleasant way. And who was that sitting over there? It was a giant, a very big but a very happy giant, holding up a bright light. Come in, shouted the giant. Scrooge was very shy about coming in, but he did not go up to the giant. "I am the ghost of Christmas now," said the giant. "Haven't you heard of me?" "No, never," answered Scrooge. "Why, I've got lots and lots of brothers, hundreds and hundreds of them." Scrooge did not find it difficult to believe this ghost. Last night a ghost took me to strange, faraway places, but I was happy to go there. I learned many things which I needed to know. So tonight, take me any place you want. And the giant, the ghost of Christmas now, did just that. The room and all its things went away, and Scrooge found himself in London Street. The weather was not at all pleasant, for winter can be very cold and snowy and unpleasant in London. However, the many people in the street were so happy that they did not worry about the weather. They said Merry Christmas loudly to everyone they met, to both friends and strangers. The shops were full of good things to eat, and they were filled with people shopping. Everyone was trying to buy things for the best possible Christmas dinner. It was not easy, for there were many things and many people, but still everyone was friendly and happy. Whenever the giant, the ghost of Christmas now, saw anyone carrying some food for Christmas dinner, he dropped a few drops of water onto it. That's to make it good, and to make them happy. He told Scrooge, "Is there some dinner in London tonight that you would like to make happy?" "Yes, there is," answered Scrooge, and he told the ghost about Bob Cratchit and his family. Suddenly, he found himself still beside the ghost in the small house of his clock. Bob was not at home, but his wife and several children were there, all working hard, trying to make the house look comfortable and pleasant, and trying to make a good Christmas dinner. They did not have much money, but still, they were going to have lots of good things to eat. The best thing was big goose. Mrs. Cratchit was now cooking it, and it smelled so good. "Where is your father? And where is your brother, Tiny Tim?" asked Mrs. Cratchit. "And where is your sister, Martha? Last Christmas she was home before this time." They were poor, and so Martha had to work and live at the shop. This was Christmas, however, and so she had a holiday. "Here's Martha now," shouted the younger children. It was certainly Martha, and how happy they all were to see her. Her mother kissed her many, many times, and the younger children talked and talked about their wonderful goose. "And here's Father." Bob Cratchit came in the door, carrying Tiny Tim on his shoulder. Tiny Tim was indeed tiny, a very small little boy, and he was crippled, and so he carried a crutch. He was a very happy child, however. How was Tiny Tim at church? His mother asked. "Fine," Bob answered. He listened to everything very carefully, and later he said that he was glad many people saw him at church, because perhaps when they saw a little crippled boy, they would remember to be kind to others. The Cratchit family was now complete, and soon they sat down to their wonderful Christmas dinner. It made even Scrooge happy to see how happy they were. They ate and ate until there was nothing left. The goose and a nice Christmas cake, and oh, so many nice things. They had something nice to drink too. When they drank, Bob stood up and said in a nice, loud voice, "A Merry Christmas to us all. God bless us." "Yes," said Tiny Tim from his chair. "God bless us, everyone." "Tell me, Ghost of Christmas now," asked Scrooge, "will Tiny Tim live to become a man?" "I do not believe that he can," answered the giant. "It seems that he will die soon, but something may happen to make his future happier." "Oh, I hope something good does happen," said Scrooge. The only unhappy moment came at the end of the meal when Bob talked about Mr. Scrooge. He said that all their good things were possible because of the money he got from Mr. Scrooge. He hoped Mr. Scrooge was happy that Christmas Day. Mrs. Cratchit was not at all happy to hear her husband talk in that way. She thought Mr. Scrooge was a very unkind man, but at last she agreed to join her husband in hoping that he was happy. She knew he could not be as happy as they were, but perhaps he could be a little happy in his own way. After they all talked happily again. Bob said that he was looking for a job that Peter, the oldest son, could do. Peter was still just a boy, but he wanted to get some money for his family. Martha told about the many interesting things that happened at the shop where she worked. In this way, the evening passed quickly for the Cratchits. They were poor and their house was small, but they were happy. Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Now left the Cratchits then. They saw more happy people on the streets of London, and then they saw many workers in many places where life was difficult, under the ground and beside the sea and on the sea. Everyone was friendly and happy on the Christmas Day, however. Scrooge learned again that it was not necessary to have a lot of money to be happy. Last, Scrooge found himself in the house of his nephew Fred. Fred and his wife had many friends visiting them. They were all laughing happily. Scrooge was surprised to find that they were laughing about him. "And when I asked him to have Christmas dinner with us," Fred was saying, "he said Christmas was nonsense." Everyone laughed at this except Fred's pretty wife. She was like Mrs. Cratchit. She could not stop thinking how unkind Scrooge was. "They say he's very rich," someone said. "Oh, yes, he is rich," Fred answered. "But his money does not help him become happy, and I'm sure we'll never get any of it." "I get very angry at him," said Fred's wife. "I don't," Fred hurried to say. "I feel sorry for him. He's lonely and so unhappy. I plan to continue to visit him every Christmas, and every Christmas I'll invite him for Christmas dinner. He may continue to refuse, but I might do him some good. Maybe he will give some money to his poor clerk, Bob Cratchit." When all his friends laughed happily at his words, Fred continued, "Look at all the fun he is missing, and all the good food." Scrooge stood there beside the Ghost of Christmas Now, watching Fred and the others. He was not really missing all the fun, because he could see and hear everything, and sometimes he even joined in their games. They did not know he was there, however, and in the end Scrooge was as lonely as ever. Fred and his wife and friends ended the evening by hoping that his Uncle Scrooge was having a Merry Christmas. They could all agree on that. Scrooge was so happy to hear their words that he was just going to thank them when the Ghost of Christmas Now took him away. "My life is so short," said the ghost. "My life is end at 12 midnight. Is your life so short?" asked Scrooge with surprise. And before Scrooge knew it, the ghost was gone, and Scrooge was back in his own bed. And when Scrooge looked around him, he saw the third ghost coming toward him. Chapter 4. This ghost was dark, and Scrooge could not see anything of its shape or its face. Also, the ghost did not say anything at all. "Are you the ghost of Christmas future?" asked Scrooge. The ghost still did not say anything at all. To answer Scrooge, it only seemed, by moving its hand, to ask Scrooge to get up and go with it. "Are you going to show me that the things which will happen in the future?" Again, there was no answer, but the ghost seemed to move its head to show that Scrooge was correct. "Ghost of Christmas future, I am very afraid of you. I am more afraid of you than I was of the other two ghosts. But I know that you want to help me. I want you to help me change and become a better man, and so I am ready to go with you." The ghost still said nothing, but with its hand it told Scrooge to come. First, they went to several places in London. Scrooge could not find himself at all, but he did not see many men whom he knew. They and he often did business together. Scrooge saw one group of men talking, and so he went close to them to hear what they said. "I don't know much about it," one man was saying. "I only know that he is dead." "When did he die?" asked a second man. "Last night, I think." "How was he ill?" "I thought he would never die." The second man did not seem to be very interested in the dead man. He paid more attention to his smoking. "I have no idea how he was ill," the first man answered. He was not really interested in the dead man either. "Who'll get his money?" asked another man, who had a very red face and a very large nose. "I don't know anything about that either. I only know that I will not get any of it." They all laughed when he said this. It sounded very funny. Scrooge wondered whom they were talking about, but he could not learn. Next, the ghost took Scrooge to see two other businessmen. He knew these two men, too. "How are you?" asked the first man. "Fine, thank you. I hear, however, that that unkind old man has died at last." "I heard so, too. Isn't it cold this year?" "Yes, isn't it?" answered the second man, and then they went on. Scrooge did not know whom these two men were talking about either. It was also strange that he could not find himself. With the first ghost, he saw himself as a child, and with the second ghost, he saw himself as he was now, but with the third ghost, he could not find himself anywhere. Next, the ghost took him to a very dark and dirty part of the city. A dirty old man was sitting in a dirty old house. As Scrooge watched, he saw three people, two women and a man, come to the old man. Each of the three people was carrying something. Come in, said the dirty old man. "I know all of you, and you know each other, I'm sure. The dead man will not need any of these things," said one of the women. "I'm sure of that." "No, he won't need them," agreed the other woman. "And so it is right that we should have them." The man carried only a few things, like a pencil case and a ring. The dirty old man bought them from him for a small amount of money. The second woman had more things, some sheets and some towels, and also some shoes. The dirty old man bought her things too. Then the third woman showed her things. The other people were all surprised to see them. "Are those his blankets?" asked the man. "Yes, they are. He won't need them any more, and so I took them away. And look at this shirt. It is a very good one, too good for him now. So I took it too. He does not look very good without his shirt, but he never did look very good." All of the others laughed at this. They had to agree with her. Scrooge was very surprised at their words. They were certainly unkind to the dead man, whoever he was. "I'm not sorry for taking anything," one of the women said. "He was never kind to us, and so why should we be kind to him?" Suddenly, Scrooge found himself beside the bed of the dead man. He could see the dead man lying in the bed, but he could not see his face. There was a sheet over his face. Scrooge wanted to know who the man was, but he was afraid to look at his face. There lay the dead man, all alone, in a big, dark house. There was no one there to feel sorry for him. There was no one there to be kind to him. Scrooge was very sad, but who was the man? "I want to go away," Scrooge said to the ghost of Christmas future. "Please take me away from here." The ghost still did not say anything. It only looked at Scrooge. "Please show me someone who feels something because this man is dead." Without saying a word, the ghost took Scrooge to see a woman with children. She was trying to do some work, but she seemed to be worried about something. She often went to the window and often looked at the clock. At last, her husband came home. He was still young, but his face was worried. Under the worry, however, there seemed to be something happy in his face. The family sat down to eat dinner. "Is the news good or bad?" the wife asked. "Bad," her husband answered. "Is there any hope at all?" "Yes, there is. He is dead." "Dead?" said the wife. "Oh, I'm so happy." She was soon sorry that she thought this way, but she was happy. "I went to his house to ask him to be kind to us. I wanted to tell him that we would pay him back the money sometime soon. We must still pay someone the money, but the next man must be more kind than he was." The husband and his wife and their children were all happy because the old man was dead. Scrooge, however, still did not know whom they were talking about. "Isn't there someone in this large city," Scrooge asked the ghost, "who is sorry because someone died?" The ghost said nothing, but he took Scrooge to a house he knew, the house of Bob Cratchit. Everything there was very, very quiet. There was Mrs. Cratchit, and there were her daughters, and there was Peter. But where was Bob? And where was Tiny Tim? Mrs. Cratchit stopped her work and put her hand in front of her eyes. She soon took it down, however. "I wonder when your father will come home," Peter answered. "He walks more slowly now than before." When he said this, everyone was very quiet again. When he carried Tiny Tim, he was very fast, but Tiny Tim was not heavy. "And your father loved him very much." "Oh, he did, he did," the children agreed. "Oh, there's your father now." Yes, it was Bob Cratchit at the door. He tried to be happy when he sat down to drink his tea, and his wife and the children were all very kind to him, but it was hard to be happy. "Did you go today?" his wife asked. "Yes, I did. It is a lovely green place. It is very, very nice. You'll see it often, because I promised Tiny Tim that we would visit him often." Bob Cratchit could not continue talking. He went upstairs to the bedroom. On the bed there lay the body of a child. It was Tiny Tim. Bob kissed the face of the child. That made him feel better, so he went downstairs to talk with his family again. He told them about meeting Scrooge's nephew Fred on the street. Fred knew him only a little, but he was very kind. When he saw that Bob did not look happy, he asked him why he was sad. And when Bob told him that Tiny Tim was dead, Fred was very, very kind. Fred told me to ask him if I needed any help. Perhaps we can ask him to find some work for Peter. Everyone thought this was a very good idea. And then Bob talked about how good Tiny Tim was before he died, and how they should try to be like him, and how they should be kind to each other. "We'll be kind to each other, Father," the children all said loudly. "Oh, I'm so happy, I'm so happy," said Bob. But he did not seem very happy. "Tell me the name of the man who died," Scrooge asked the ghost. The ghost still did not say anything, but he took Scrooge to a place he knew. It was his own office. But when Scrooge looked into the window, he was surprised. Everything was there, all right, but someone else was sitting in Scrooge's chair. Then the ghost took Scrooge to a dark, dark part of the city. Beside the church there was an open space and many lonely graves. "Before I look at the name," said Scrooge, "tell me something. You are showing me many things. Will these things certainly happen? Or is it only that they may happen?" The ghost said nothing. And then Scrooge looked at one grave. On it he found his own name, Scrooge. Scrooge was very surprised. "I have changed," he shouted. "I want to become a better man. I want to be kinder to other people. And I have changed. Really, I have." The ghost still did not say anything, but it seemed to move when Scrooge said this. "I will try to be better, and then perhaps these bad things will not happen. I remember all the things I have seen, and I will try to enjoy Christmas, and I will try to help other people to enjoy Christmas too." Scrooge tried to take hold of the hand of the ghost, but the ghost pushed him away, and suddenly Scrooge saw only his own bed. Chapter 5. Yes, it was really his own bed, and his own bedroom. Best of all, Scrooge's time was his own. He had time to change his life and be a better man. I will live in the past, and in the present, and in the future. Scrooge promised himself as he jumped out of bed. I remember what the three ghosts told me, and what they showed me. Oh, Jacob Marley, thank you for everything. Scrooge went around his rooms very carefully. He was glad to find everything was all right. "I am so happy that I don't know what to do," he said. And yes, it was true. He was a very happy man indeed. He made many mistakes getting dressed, but he did not care. "Merry Christmas to everyone," he kept shouting, "and a Happy New Year to everyone too." "I don't know what day of the month it is," Scrooge said to himself. "I don't know how long I have been gone with the ghost. I don't know any more than a baby, but I don't care. I'm so happy." Just then, Scrooge heard the bells of a nearby church ring. He went to the window and opened it. Below, he saw a little boy all dressed up in his best clothes. "What day is today?" Scrooge called down. "What?" the boy asked. He seemed surprised, but anyone would be surprised at such a sudden question from a stranger. "What day is today, my boy?" asked Scrooge. He seemed more friendly this time. "Today? Why, it's Christmas Day." "It's Christmas Day," Scrooge said to himself. "I haven't missed it. The spirits have done all this to me. They have done all this for me. In only one night. They can do anything they want to do, can't they? Of course they can." Then Scrooge remembered the boy in the street. He was still standing there looking up at the old man with a surprised look on his face. "Boy, do you know the meat shop down the street?" "Of course I know it." "Clever boy. And do you know, my young man, if the big turkey is still hanging in the window?" "Not the little one, but the big one." "Do you mean the turkey that is as big as I am?" asked the boy. "My, you're a clever young man. That's just the one I mean," answered Scrooge. "It's still hanging there, sir. I just saw it." "Good. Go and buy it." "Really, sir?" "Yes, I mean what I say. Go and tell the owner of the shop to bring the turkey here. I will tell him where to take it, and I will give you some money for taking the trouble to help me." The boy started to run to the meat shop as soon as he heard Scrooge mention giving him some money. "I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's house," Scrooge said to himself, "and I won't tell him who sent it. It's 2 times as big as Tiny Tim, and won't they all enjoy having it, and seeing it, and eating it?" When the owner of the shop and the boy brought the turkey, Scrooge saw that, indeed, it was a very large bird. "That's too big to carry all the way to Bob Cratchit's house. Take a cab." Suddenly, Scrooge didn't care how much money he spent. He paid for the turkey, and he paid for the cab, and he gave the boy some money too. Suddenly, it was fun for him to spend money. He laughed all the time he was talking with them, and after they laughed, he laughed some more. Oh, he was so happy. It took him a long time, but finally Scrooge got dressed in his best clothes and left his house. He smiled at everyone he met, and he said, "Merry Christmas" to everyone too. In fact, one of the first people he met was a fat man whom Scrooge remembered very well. "Yesterday this man came to my office and asked me for some money for the poor. I didn't give him anything, but I should have." The fat man was surprised when Scrooge spoke to him. He was not only friendly, he was really happy. "Sir, I made a mistake yesterday. Please come to my office again tomorrow, and I'll give you a lot of money. I haven't given money to poor people for many years, so I must give much now." The fat man was surprised, but he was glad to hear Scrooge's words. The poor people needed many things, and with so much money he could buy many things for them. "Goodbye, sir, and a Merry Christmas to you," said Scrooge in a loud voice. Scrooge went to church, and later, for a long time, he walked in the streets. Everyone and everything so made him happy. Then, in the afternoon, he went to his nephew's house. When Scrooge got there, however, it was difficult for him to go in. He walked up and down in front of the house many times. He was afraid to meet Fred again. "Yesterday, I was so very unkind to him. Poor boy." At last, Scrooge went in, however. Fred and his wife were just getting ready for their friends. They were very surprised to see Scrooge, but they were very happy that he was there. Fred was happier than his wife, of course, but both were very happy. Scrooge stayed with Fred the rest of the day. Many other friends came, and they all ate a lot, and talked a lot, and played many games. "It's been many years since I've enjoyed myself as much," Scrooge said to himself many times. The next morning, Scrooge was at his office unusually early. He wanted to be there before Bob Cratchit came, and he was. In fact, Bob was late. 5 minutes late. 10 minutes late. 15 minutes late. 18.5 minutes late. Bob at last came into the office very quietly. He walked quietly and quickly to his desk. He seemed to hope that Scrooge would not see him. "You, sir, why are you so late?" Scrooge asked. He tried to use his old voice, the voice of the unkind Scrooge. "I'm very sorry, sir. I know I'm a little late," said Bob. "But yesterday was a very exciting day." "I don't want this to happen any longer," began Scrooge. "And in order to make sure that it doesn't happen again, I'm going to increase your salary." Bob was very surprised. He thought that the old man was acting very strangely, but Scrooge continued to speak. "I haven't been good to you, but I will be good to you beginning today. And I'll take good care of your family, Tiny Tim most of all." And it was all true. Scrooge was very kind to Bob from then on, and he was good to Tiny Tim. And Tiny Tim didn't die. Scrooge was good to everyone, in fact. Many people smiled when they saw how different he was, but he did not care. He was happy, happier than ever in his life. Scrooge knew how to have a Merry Christmas, that was certain. May that be true of every one of us. And so, as Tiny Tim said, God bless us, everyone.